Welcome to the Rustic Garden Homestead. This one pill, aspirin, can really make a difference. It can help your tomato plants deal with diseases that come to your garden over the summer. I've been using this for the last decade. Let me explain how aspirin works. Tomato plants are really susceptible to early blight and late blight. They get fungal issues. When the fungus attacks the leaf, the plant naturally sends out hormones telling itself that it's being attacked, and it toughens up the leaves. It puts out defenses. It's a systemic response called the SARs response, where the plant really literally beefs up its defenses to keep the fungus from spreading. Now, you can't cure a tomato plant that has fungal issues using an aspirin. Aspirin also is not a fertilizer, but what it does is it mimics that hormone that causes the response of the tomato plant to beef up its defenses. So what you do is you use 325 milligrams, a single aspirin tablet, and you could use 1 or 2 in a gallon of water. You can't really overdo it. But it's a 325 milligram tablet. You can put it in a sprayer, dissolve it, spray the plant. You can put it into a gallon of water, water in the root system, water in the leaves. You just want to contact the plant's leaves and roots so that it absorbs the aspirin, and I believe it's the acetylsalicylic acid, if I have it right, that mimics the natural hormone in a tomato plant that triggers the SAR response, the systemic response the plant does to fight off fungus. By using the aspirin, you're telling the tomato plant it's being attacked by a fungus. It puts out all of its defenses. The leaves usually get a little bit tougher, a little bit greener, and it's ready to fight off fungus. So when the fungus spores come, hit the leaves, your plant already has its response turned on, basically, and it makes it much harder for the fungus to spread and take hold on the plant. It really works. I've been doing this well over a decade, probably 15 years. There's lots of research on it. Don't just look at YouTube videos. If you go to the internet, just search SARs response, S-A-R, in tomato plants, or aspirin in tomatoes, and you'll find really good research that shows that it is effective. Now, in the past I've said I haven't found much research on whether or not this works with other plants in the family, like pepper plants or eggplant, but there is research showing that it also helps pepper plants. The best response I see is typically in tomato plants, and here in Maryland I do get I get early blight, so I use the aspirin for my tomato plants. My peppers don't really get a whole lot of issues with fungus and stuff that I feel like I need to spray it with aspirin. So I gave you the basic way to use the aspirin. Let me show a planting hole video I do. This is how I set up the planting area, just a 10 by 10 inch deep space, 10 inches wide, put in all the good stuff. I put all my transplants in that way. This is the basic planting hole I use in my garden. You're going to see this in different videos because the basic setup is the same. I'd like to dig the hole about 10 inches deep, 12 inches deep at the most. That's 25 to 30 centimeters deep. You know, 10 inches wide, 25 centimeters wide, something close to that. It doesn't have to be perfect. The whole idea is that you're just digging out a hole, you're prepping the soil. Once you dig it out to the depth, you definitely want to get in, loosen up the bottom. Helps the root system just grow deeper, depending on what you're growing. And then you're going to add your basic ingredients. I like the planting hole because if this was a brand new bed, I don't have to amend and spend money taking care of this entire bed. I can just, set it up, put in a planting hole 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe for 4 tomatoes, or like over there I have cucumbers, 1, 2 for cucumbers. It lets me just focus the resources where they're needed for this year. Nature will take care of the rest of the bed. It's a way to save some money. Filling the hole. Now, if you have tons of compost, you can just go with compost. You're going to fill that at least halfway with the compost. This is my compost. This is made from leaves. It's absolutely beautiful. And generally speaking, I would just put most of that in there, mix it through, put in my plant. But we're going to be in different points in our gardens with what resources we have available. You can use peat moss. The whole idea is that you're giving nutrients to this hole, and you're also creating a place where moisture is going to stay. That's really important, like I was saying, for the root systems. Now, you could replace peat moss with coco coir. They both impact the environment, and you just have to decide which one you want to use. If you have endless compost, certainly just use compost. But I would fill the hole about halfway with the peat moss or halfway with the compost. If you're using both, a quarter of each or something like that. That is a great addition to really set this hole up. Now, you can go ahead, put in any organic granular fertilizer. This bag is a 27-pound bag that I got on sale years ago for under, let's just say under $5, which is ridiculous. You want to put in 1 or 2 tablespoons of any organic granular fertilizer. That's a slow release, and then you just want to mix everything through. You're not going to plant directly into that. Slowly add in some soil and just blend it together really well. And then you can kind of backfill in the rest of the soil. You have your basic planting hole set up, and then for the tomato plant or whatever you're growing, I would just come over, dig it out, set it to the depth I went. And remember, the tomato plants are doing, a quarter depth of the entire stem or a third of the depth. You drop in your plant, backfill around there, and then you go ahead and you water it in. In this case, one of the tips is using a water-soluble a water-soluble fertilizer, higher in nitrogen, to get the plant off to a great start. But you're going to water it in, your plant is good to go. But in that planting hole, what I'm doing now is I'm just pushing in an aspirin about 6 inches deep, leave the aspirin there. I do that when I transplant the tomato plant, and that's really good for a good, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. That puts the aspirin in there, it gets absorbed into the root system, triggers that response. Once the plant gets to about this tall, maybe 18 inches, 24 inches, I will make a mixture of 1 gallon of water, 1 325 milligram tablet, and again, make sure it's not coated, because if you're going to use a sprayer, the coating will actually clog the sprayer. But you can just use a gallon watering container. Drop in the aspirin, dissolve it, and just give it a pour right into the root system. 1, 2, 3. Over the leaves, 1, 2, 3. That's going to, again, make sure that response is being triggered, and it's going to keep your tomato literally beefed up against defenses, beefing up its defenses to keep the fungus from taking hold. Now, if you have an outbreak of a fungus, the aspirin's not going to cure that. The response is already going. This does not cure a plant. I just want to be clear. The aspirin helps it fight off future fungal infestation, so it stops the problem from showing up. It makes the tomato really tough. It's also not a fertilizer. It doesn't do anything for nutrition or anything like that. It's specifically used to turn on the defenses of the tomato plant. Today is May 25th. These transplants have been in the ground since May 10th. They all got a 325 milligram tablet of aspirin put into the planting hole. They're doing really, really well. I'm going to wait that 4 weeks, 5 weeks before I start spraying them. You don't have to put it into the planting hole. That's just one way to deliver the aspirin. You could just let it grow and then use the spray or the watering can method of activating the SARs response with the aspirin. I don't really have to start this technically until really towards the end of June, when early blight rolls in. But you want to get this started well ahead of time before before those fungus and diseases show up in your garden. You may not know that yet, so starting it right from the beginning is perfectly fine. It doesn't seem to put any wear or tear on the plant, doesn't change how much it fruits, doesn't change the fruit flavor or anything like that. Now, a lot of people say, well, is aspirin organic? I don't know, to be honest with you. It's a little tiny aspirin. It's not going to cause any problems in the soil. It's not going to damage the soil life. If you feel like that's not organic, some people use willow bark and soak it, but that's a big process. I like to just drop the aspirin in the water, dissolve it in a gallon, and then a gallon will probably treat all 9 of these plants that I just showed you. You don't have to use that much. You are just triggering the response. I really like just popping the pill into the planting hole, because you're good for a good 6 or 8 weeks before you have to start this treatment. When the plant's again 18 to 24 inches tall, or that 6-week period has gone by, you just want to soak the top in. Put 1 aspirin in a gallon of water, soak the top, soak the base, and it really does make a difference. And again, I just want to be clear that this doesn't cure a fungal attack. So if this plant was covered in a fungus, the aspirin isn't going to do much. I've already said that, because the plant has already started the response to defend itself against the fungus. So once you have a fungus, you want to do something else to clean up the leaves. But this is a great way to really prevent the problem from taking hold of a plant and then covering a plant. You're going to get much better harvests. My plants survive through the high heat of summer when early blight rolls in, And the addition of the aspirin really does make a difference. These plants are beautiful, and part of it is, how I set up the soil, take care of the soil. But the addition of the aspirin really does make a difference. This is a Sweet Cherry 100. This has been in the ground since the beginning of May, I think May 1st. And it's really good size. Again, we're I think the 25th of May. These plants are doing exactly what I want them to do. And by giving them the aspirin, I have to worry less about a fungal issue really taking hold and wiping out my tomato plants. It may not stop diseases, the fungus, from getting onto your plants, but it greatly slows it down. So you have time maybe to use hydrogen peroxide or an antifungal, or you just don't even notice it. The plant takes care of the problem itself. When a fungus comes in and, infects your plant, the spores are really, really tiny, like hundreds of them can be put on, if not thousands, like on a piece of human hair. They're really, really tiny, so we can't see them. So when they're that small and you have the SARs response going with the tomato plant, it's really hard for them to establish, reproduce, and take hold. This year, I think I'm growing about 35 different varieties of tomatoes. If you have good eyes, you'll get to see a little bit of white dust on here, that's spinosad. The aspirin, in theory, can help with pest issues, but it doesn't kill insects. I had flea beetles on here, so I used spinosad. But again, the tomatoes are really taking off. And if you haven't done it before, don't go and do all your tomato plants. Maybe do a couple just so you can see if there's a difference that you notice using the aspirin. How often do I use the aspirin? You can do this every 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks is probably fine. You can't hurt your plant by overdoing it. It's just not necessary. So about every 3 weeks, 1 tablet, 325 milligrams, uncoated, into a gallon of water. Soak the leaves, some of the roots, and you're going to trigger that response for the plant to fight off the fungus. But, aspirin's really inexpensive. You can do this pretty easily. It doesn't take long to treat the plants, and it's a great way to prevent fungus from establishing on your plant. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. Please subscribe. I'll show you how I take care of all these tomato plants throughout the season. And if you have questions about using aspirin in your garden, please leave a comment and I will respond. Thanks so much for watching.